I live and practice in Detroit, and I believe our city and the people that live here represent the best of America. I wanted to create a place that folks can go to that not only delivers health information, but also helps us share inspirational stories to help all of us grow. With real problems discussed in depth with real solutions. You are the most important person to the patient. This is Ask Dr. Nady. Hello and welcome to Ask Dr. Nady. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be discussing a topic that many of us view differently, and that is the meaning of life. To some, it's noble thoughts, noble words spoken, and noble deeds done. There are infinite possibilities and many answers for every individual. These answers can vary depending on age, religion, and finances. Today, we'll have some amazing people who will share with us their wonderful experiences and how they found the true meaning of life and how spiritual health affects our physical health.
And I spent 7 days in a coma, and any physicians out there will realize that to be that sick in coma, I was by the end of the week down to a 2% chance of survival with no real chance of recovery, and then ended up coming back to this world. To this day, my doctors would tell you they have no Western medical explanation for that at all. It's a miraculous healing.
Welcome back. You're watching Ask Dr. Nady, and today we have a very special episode. You know, our time is often so full we fail to step back and see a broader picture. What do you live for? What is our purpose? When you're busy, do you ever stop to wonder what the meaning of life really is? Here with us now is an extraordinary man, a neurosurgeon and author, Dr. Eben Alexander. Please welcome him. Thank you for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, we know you've had an extraordinary journey. Start, a little bit further back. What led you to become a neurosurgeon? What was your fascination with the brain?
Well, I was very influenced by my father. He had been a combat surgeon in the Second World War, then went on to head a neurosurgical training program in North Carolina. He was also very religious. He knew when he operated on a patient, that patient did well, that it was mainly God's work, and his part was very small. And he was such a mentor to me and such a beautiful role model. I wanted to follow in his footsteps, and that kind of led me into neurosurgery. And
tell us about, so when he was very deeply religious, but you were not, were you?
Well, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and like many people of that generation, I knew that science is absolutely the pathway to truth. I wanted to believe what I learned in my Methodist church growing up in North Carolina, and I spent many years of my life wanting to believe in that and power of prayer, and I suspected that prayer did have tremendous power in healing, and yet I had great difficulty seeing how conscious awareness could survive the death of the brain and body. And that's where my near-death experience back in 2008 proved to be so valuable.
And so tell folks that are in the studio and at home, what happened with your near-death experience? What exactly took place?
Well, basically, I very suddenly came down with a severe, what's called a gram-negative bacterial meningitis. It's the worst kind of bacterial meningitis you can have. I went from symptom onset to seizures and deep coma over about 3.5 hours. That in itself is a very bad sign to have that disease and go into coma that quickly. And I spent 7 days in a coma. And any physicians out there will realize that to be that sick in coma, I was by the end of the week down to a 2% chance of survival with no real chance of recovery, and then ended up coming back to this world. To this day, my doctors would tell you they have no Western medical explanation for that at all. It's a miraculous healing.
And what did you see when you in that near-death experience that changed your life? What did you see, if you could walk us through that?
Well, really, it all began in what I call the earthworm's eye view, which is a very primitive, coarse, unresponsive kind of underground realm that seemed to go for a very long time. And I was rescued from that by a slowly spinning white light that had a perfect musical melody with it. That opened up into a brilliant gateway valley that had a lot of Earth-like features, but was also very beautiful and ultra real, much more sharp, crisp, and real than even this world. That part is hard to explain to people, that ultra reality. And that realm had not only beautiful butterflies and flowers and a beautiful girl and many souls dancing down below, but also up above these swooping orbs of light, what I called later angelic choirs, and these anthems and chants, hymns that would come down from them. And yet that sound of the angelic choirs provided yet another portal into higher and higher levels as lower spatial and temporal dimensions collapsed down. And then the furthest I went on this journey was to what I call the core, which was infinite inky blackness, completely filled to overflowing with the infinite healing power of that unconditional love of the deity in that realm. And the sound I heard in that realm with that deity was the sound of Om, which to me was the resonance in that infinity and that eternity. But that's what I came back calling that deity. I had grown up very much in a Christian faith. For me, this God was so much more than I could ever have imagined, so much more awesome and beyond words, beyond any description, and yet deeply part of me, of all of us, really.
Where do you think you were?
I think I was in a realm that is very much the home of our spiritual selves. I see us all as spiritual beings and think that we're all connected as spiritual beings. And what I feel that I saw in this journey, in those realms, that Gateway Valley and all the way out to that core realm, was what I would say is the home of that divine, that is the home to all of us, the home to all of our souls, to our very consciousness. And we can learn to access that in ways without needing a near-death experience. But I believe that's what we can all do.
And you said, but you said you went into that black area that you felt where you experienced that deep love. When you've been there, I mean, I think, some of us call that God, some of us call that the Great Spirit, some of us call that consciousness, and you've been there and you're extremely fortunate. How does that then change the meaning of life for you and for anybody else who's experienced that?
Well, for me, it was a complete 180-degree shift. My scientific training over all those years as an academic neurosurgeon for more than 20 years had led me to believe that the brain creates consciousness, and I bought into our conventional scientific materialism. What my journey showed me very clearly is I had it completely backwards. The thing that really exists is consciousness, soul, spirit, that in fact we're all interconnected with that deep mystery of consciousness itself. And I came to realize that all of this has to do with love. First of all, loving ourselves. Most of the problems of this world are because we do not even love ourselves enough. And so I would say that my understanding of the meaning of life shifted very much through my journey to realizing that love is fundamental. Loving oneself, loving others. We've always heard of loving your neighbor, loving your enemies, loving all beings, and that showing compassion, and forgiveness, acceptance, and mercy is really the main lesson for humanity at this point in time. And I think that's what we're all here to learn. Very important to point out that the hardships in life, as a neurosurgeon, I would include in there illnesses, injury, that these are gifts, that these are how our souls grow. And so to face the hardships and the hurdles, the challenges, for what they are, they're stepping stones that allow our souls to manifest that love for ourselves and for others. And that's what enables us to ascend towards that oneness with the divine. And I believe that that is our purpose for being here.
That's wonderfully said. We have to take a break. More with Dr. Alexander when we come back.
By using the sacred acoustics sounds, I'm able to then get in and develop that observer within, to realize that there is far greater insight, there's intuitive wisdom, there's creativity, great sources of health and of well-being, of relaxation, of stress relief, all comes from this kind of meditation, but also great guidance to help us in making decisions in our life. And I believe that we can manifest our own health. Physical, mental, emotional health must begin with spiritual health, which I think we can all get to in deep meditation and centering prayer.
welcome back. You're watching Ask Dr. Nenny, and we're talking about the meaning of life. We were talking with Dr. Alexander, and we left you. He said something very critical. He said the conflicts in life, all of the difficulties and the trials and tribulation actually make you stronger. And Dr. Alexander, we were talking at the break, we did a show on a woman with who had horrendous sexual abuse, and one of the things that she said was that abuse and that trauma led to something that made her a completely different person, and she felt like she actually benefited and was much greater. I want you to talk about that, emphasize that, because I think all the religions, the organized religions talk about it, but we don't really give it the credit and give it the value that it really has. Explain to us what you mean by that.
Well, I think it's hard to see it when we're in the middle of it. I mean, it's human that when we have these hardships, if one gets a terminal diagnosis or loses a loved one, loses a child, these kind of challenges are extreme. And it's very difficult in the moment sometimes to see that there could be any silver lining, any kind of gift to that. And yet I think that from my point of view, that especially when one looks back over life, you come to realize that those challenges and difficulties were what helped us to grow. And a big part of this, as far as I'm concerned, is that growth involves strengthening our relationships with others, because nothing else matters other than our interactions with other human beings and the lessons that we're here to learn and teach. And so much of the energy that drives that growth comes out of that hardship and then the lessons that we gain from it. When we're able to learn and to grow and to strengthen our love for ourselves and for other beings in that whole process of learning and teaching those lessons involved in those difficulties. So I think it's something that just makes a lot of sense, but it's, as I said, it's hard to see in the midst of it.
It's hard to see sometimes in general because we get, and you talk about the noise, I talk about the noise in my head, you call it the chatterbox.
Right.
So how do you stop that chatter?
Well, I think this is an important thing to learn. Because
and just so people know what I'm talking about, the chatterbox in your head, the thoughts in your head that you cannot stop, to quiet it down. How do you stop that?
Right. Well, what I recommend and what I use is using the sacred acoustic sounds made by the Sacred Acoustics Company to get into deep states of transcendental awareness. Now, this has a lot to do with quieting that little voice, because before my coma, I might have tried to argue that little voice in the head is consciousness. In fact, that is not consciousness at all. The voice in the head comes from a part of the brain about that big. There actually are two regions that size, one that produces speech, one that receives speech and understands it. And they are nothing more than, they're called in the book, The Untethered Soul, an annoying roommate. I think it's important to remember your consciousness is far grander than that. And the deep mystery of consciousness to the scientific community is the observer, is the awareness. And so in meditation, whether it be through sound-enhanced meditation or any form of meditation or centering prayer, any way of getting much deeper to that oneness, to that divine spirit that is within us all and our connection to the divine, I think that those are techniques that can help all of us, that kind of prayer or meditation. For me, whenever I talk about sound-enhanced meditation, for me it is a form of centering prayer, which means that it's a way to let that little voice in my head state an intention, but then that little voice goes into timeout because there is far greater wisdom. And by using the sacred acoustics sounds, I'm able to then get in and develop that observer within, to realize that there is far greater insight, there's intuitive wisdom, there's creativity, great sources of health and of well-being, of relaxation, of stress relief, all comes from this kind of meditation, but also great guidance to help us in making decisions in our life. And I believe that we can manifest our own health. Physical, mental, emotional health must begin with spiritual health, which I think we can all get to in deep meditation and centering prayer.
That's wonderful. Dr. Alexander, I think we have a question from our studio audience. Do you have a question? Yes, sir.
Yes, you mentioned your own experience kind of coming head to head against your scientific training and long-held beliefs. What does the effects of the knowledge of the afterlife have on someone physically in their life here right now?
Well, I think so many people often come up and say, well, why this big focus on death and dying? I would say this is all about living.
Right.
That's really what the focus is. How can one possibly live one's life here without having a much fuller view of who we are and what we're doing? And for me, it became very clear that consciousness is not created by the brain at all, so that in fact, when our physical body dies, our consciousness is set free. It's actually reaches a much higher level. That's why near-death experiencers so often talk about the ultra reality of that realm. It's so difficult to put into any kind of an understanding. And yet this is really more of who we are. And that's why I think going deep within consciousness is so valuable at helping us to realize that grander picture of who we are and help us to live our lives. So it's really meditation and centering prayer, I would say, are essential to living this life, because by going deep within our consciousness, we can come to see the underlying truth much more clearly. And that's why it's so valuable.
And it's really not about death, but rather one of the fundamental things that we try to answer when we're alive is what's the meaning of life, and then what is it all about? And I think having that journey, and Dr. Alexander had the near-death experience, but you're saying that through the sacred acoustics, you can actually have a similar experience to go in. So thank you very much for sharing that. It really gives us a lot of at least insight, and it helps us understand maybe this is something we can explore. We're going to take a break. Next, we'll hear about a spiritual leader who's found his purpose in religion. Please stay tuned.
Spirituality or faith provides me with the sense of connection with the Creator, the sense of balance, sense of commitment, responsibility, representing the character and qualities of the Creator, which represent the purpose of life.
Welcome back. You're watching Ask Dr. Nandi, and we're talking about the meaning of life today. Now, many scientists and researchers have given the testimony to people who have faith-driven lives and practice prayer and also have physically healthier lives. Benefits throughout many world religions have prescribed thoughts on forgiveness, stress coping, and overall optimistic philosophies. A study, in fact, done by the Pew Research Center found that there has been a significant increase in millennials who are not religiously affiliated. Now, what does that mean? Is religion still a viable source to drive your purpose in this physical wonder called life? Now, here with us is Imam Elahi, a faith leader with the Islamic House of Wisdom in Dearborn, Michigan. Please welcome him. Pleasure seeing you. Thank you for joining us. Imam, tell us first, a lot of people who are in this audience and are at home, what is an imam?
When we use the term imam in United States, it means Muslim religious leader that usually leads the prayer or leads the mosque.
I see. And what about outside the United States? In Islamic religion, if you're an imam, what does that mean?
Well, in different schools of thought in Islam, it may have different application, but still it deals with religious leadership, spiritual leadership, community leadership. In Shia school of thought, though, the term of imam usually is used for those 12 spiritual successors of Prophet Muhammad.
Excellent. And then tell me, spirituality is now a huge part of your life. How has it shaped your life, being spiritual?
Well, spirituality or faith provides me with the sense of connection with the Creator, the sense of balance, sense of commitment, responsibility, representing the character and qualities of the Creator, which represent the purpose of life. And the word balance is the word here, really, that the balance between the matter and meaning, the physical and spiritual.
But tell me about physical health. Now, as being a physician, I really want, many of my patients who are watching and those who are at home want their physical health to be better. How does religion, spirituality actually improve physical well-being or physical health?
In this country, the depression costs this country more than $80 billion a year. And the role of faith and spirituality is to provide us with hope, with that communication, with that joy and happiness and hope in life.
Hope.
That there is no space, there is no place for depression for a person of faith, a person of spirituality, because there is always the light of hope and the light of love and light of connection, meaning, purpose, direction, destination for our journey as human beings.
It makes it much more meaningful then, right? Yeah. And so,
because without faith, really, without spirituality, without that connection, there is no meaning for life. There is no happiness. There is no hope. There is no balance. There is no destination for life. I mean, if you, in the absence of God, there is no meaning for right and wrong. There is no meaning for responsibility. There is no meaning for the direction for our life. Everything is meaningless if we take God out of existence, out of universe, out of life.
Those are wonderful thoughts. Thank you. I heard you have a question from the studio audience. Do we have a question?
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they seem so closely related to each other. What are your thoughts on how we can grow together?
That's a good question.
Well, yes, we are the members of Abrahamic family. We share the concept of oneness of God, the concept of revelation, Adam and Eve, and so many ethical values that we share, about the characteristics of God, that He is a God of mercy, God of wisdom, forgiveness, patience, peace, generosity, justice. And we learn from Abraham, we learn the concept of submission and sincerity towards the Creator. From Moses, we learn courage and a struggle for justice. From Jesus, we learn love and sacrifice. From Muhammad, we learn wisdom and vision. So we are all members of the same family, and if we work together, there's no problem in this world that we cannot solve it if Muslims, Jews, and Christians, they start working together.
Well said, Imam. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll address another path individuals find their purpose in: business and capital market. Please stay with us.
It's very important for my faith of being a Lutheran. We know that we're saved by grace, and grace really trumps everything in that regard. And that now we see the rules or the commandments, so to speak, as a way in which here's God's will for my life and how I would order my life in that way. But I know that in all things, God is going to be gracious to me. He's going to be loving to me just because of what He's done for me. So amazing. I don't have to sweat or be so concerned about did I mess up or how badly I messed up.
We're back with you and Ask Dr. Nandi, and today we've been discussing finding the meaning in life. And joining us is Pastor Tim Holterland with the Shepherd King Lutheran Church. Pastor Tim, very important. We just talked about community health and community giving. Now, the Christian notion of love thy neighbor and help thy neighbor. Tell me how that plays into this.
Probably in a couple of different ways. I can think of my own community and my own church and my own congregation. They're always looking for ways in which they'd be able to reach out to the community. Head Start is a program that's in the United States for kids who are underprivileged. It's a way for them to get some early education, but the families are in desperate need. And so twice a year, we're able to help them at certain times when they've got a need for food, or at Christmas time in the United States, a need for a gift, or ways in which we'd be able to help them out. For me personally, it's just a big part of my faith to take my love for Christ and then share it with the rest of the community. So in ways that I do that is I'm involved in what's called a spiritual half hour in a treatment center called Maple Grove.
Yeah.
And when I was first asked to volunteer for that, I had asked a couple of different people, you know, what should I do? What should I say? You know, and the people that I spoke with says, I've never been a part of anything like this before, so you're on your own.
Wow.
It wasn't. So then when I said, now I thought about it, and I said, Jesus Christ told these remarkable stories called parables, and it's an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. And so when we gathered everybody together for the spiritual half hour, obviously we're relating things to 12 steps, and one of them is talking about their higher power. And as I began to kind of unpack that story, people started to talk about it. And you could just see within that half hour, the 30 minutes, that people were ready to go to a next level of treatment. They're talking about, you know, I'm getting ready to be discharged in the next couple of days. What do you think I should do? And talking about that faith, the spirituality that are able to help them once they leave the treatment center.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And you've been able to do that. How has spirituality impacted your life, and how has it given meaning to your life? And in turn, how have you been able to give meaning to others?
Well, I think there's one thing that Christ said in the Gospels is, because I live, you will live also. And I really think his death and resurrection just means the world to me personally. And I would say it's like, you know, in the United States, sports are very important. And if you're watching a sporting event, you know, you're cheering when they're winning. You're so dejected when they're losing.
Right.
You know, but if you had, like, say, you taped it and you went to the very end and you found out your team won, then when it came to being, you know, there was something terrible that happened to your team, you wouldn't get too nervous about it because you knew how it was going to end.
Right.
So with Jesus Christ, it was like, because he rose again, I'm going to rise again. I'm going to live with him, and so I can deliver that message in wonderful ways. So I'm also a chaplain for the fire department. So there's a lot of different ways in which I can do that. Firefighters are hurt on a very regular basis. I'm called to the hospital, meeting with families. I can give them that same message.
You can give them your spirituality.
Right.
And you can impart that. We have a question from the studio audience, I believe. Do we have one? Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's so many sects of Christianity and different disciplines of Islam and Judaism. How important are rules versus grace? And in your opinion, does having a seed of faith apply to someone who's not necessarily a quote-unquote Christian?
It's a great question.
Well, I'd say that aspect of rules and grace, I think, is very important. It's very important for my faith of being a Lutheran. We know that we're saved by grace, and grace really trumps everything in that regard, and that now we see the rules, or the commandments, so to speak, as a way in which here's God's will for my life and how I would order my life in that way. But I know that in all things, God is going to be gracious to me. He's going to be loving to me just because of what He's done for me. So I don't have to sweat or be so concerned about, did I mess up, or how badly I messed up.
And with the consequence, I think, you know, I've heard Dr. Alexander, I've heard the Imam, and I've heard you now, and the concept of love and being loved, and the fact that really, you know, that somebody's really got your back. You don't have to worry about, and failing is really part of the whole deal, which is wonderful. Up next, we'll speak with a woman whose religious background has guided her to working with minority youth. Please stay tuned.
We pray in front of a fire. We're not fire worshipers, as many of us call us. We just pray in front of a candle or a fire to symbolize good mind, so an enlightened mind, and enlightened truth. And so we do everything with that in mind. We have good thoughts, we think good words, think good thoughts, say good words, and do good deeds. And that do good deeds is really the crux of it. That's the important part.
Welcome back. You're watching Ask Dr. Nettie, and today we've been learning and discussing finding the meaning in life. And we're delighted to have with us Sharnaz Binwala, president of the Zoroastrian Association of Michigan. Good thoughts, good words, and good deeds are the concept of Zoroastrianism. The idea that man has the freedom to choose between good and evil or right and wrong. This religion originated in Persia or ancient Iran by the prophet Zarathustra, or the Zoroaster, as some call him. It is often recalled as the world's first monotheic religion. Please welcome her friend. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you joining us. So tell us, a lot of people in this room, in our audience, and at home don't really know what Zoroastrianism is. Can you tell us?
So it, like you said, it did originate in Persia, when Iran was Persia, 1100 BCE, around there. And Zarathustra got his calling at the age of 30. And in his calling, he felt like there should be one God. And our God is Ahura Mazda, which means the God of wisdom. And Zarathustra means the golden light, which makes sense because we pray in front of a fire. We're not fire worshipers, as many of us call us. We just pray in front of a candle or a fire to symbolize good mind, so an enlightened mind, and enlightened truth. And so we do everything with that in mind. We have good thoughts, we think good words, think good thoughts, say good words, and do good deeds. And that do good deeds is really the crux of it. That's the important part.
And it's interesting that you, if I may interrupt,
Sure.
that you actually use the light. And it's my belief that you probably use the light to center, to be able to get to that. In Hinduism, when I was growing up, we were, my parents and we were Hindu, we used deities to center yourself. The Imam used something else, our pastor used something else. Dr. Alexander, with his experience, of looking at the spirituality, used something else. And I guess these examples are to show that despite the vast differences of all these individuals, we're talking about the same idea, and also talking about what we do here is important. The relationships we create and the deeds we do. So tell me about, with Zoroastrianism, why is it not, have more of a presence in the world, and why is it so few of us know so little about it?
That's a great question. So Zoroastrianism was the reigning power of many Persian empires, and then came the invasion with many of our deities. Alexander of Macedonia came in, which people may refer to as Alexander the Great, but we don't do that.
Depends on which side you're on.
Exactly. And so many of our religious texts were destroyed. Our temples were destroyed during that time period. And despite all of that, we reigned again. And then the Islamic invasion happened, and we were forced to either flee to Sinjar, India, or to practice our religion in hiding in Iran. And many of us stayed and practiced in caves in hiding. But yet, again, we came out of hiding, and we are now philanthropic. We have a center in Yazd. We have centers and temples all over India. And
how has it shaped your life? We talk about the spirituality of Zoroastrianism. How has it shaped your life and give meaning to it?
Well, in many ways. So I am a teacher by trade, and for me, if I don't do good, it doesn't make any sense. My students, I do this with every fiber of my being. I really teach them to think and to learn. I'm a genetics teacher, so most people think that science is black and white and nothing in between. But if you stop and think about the world today, there are so many perspectives that students have to look at. And so I teach it with that idea. We read articles, we discuss, we collaborate, And the idea is that because you have to look at the world from various perspectives, that's the only way you will truly understand the science behind anything.
It's wonderful. I mean, when I hear you talk, I can hear Imam Alahi, because what you're talking about, the idea of good deeds, he talked about zakat. And I love to see the similarities and commonality in what you do. We do have an audience question, I hear. Is there somebody who's a question? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yes. What advice would you have for citizens of multi-religion communities to work together?
Wonderful question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So as a matter of fact, I'm part of the interfaith community here in Detroit, and I work really hard with that. I find that if we study similarities, just as you did, we can work together. I think it's really important. One of the things that we have in our religion is education is by far the most important thing. And if we educate ourselves in these various religions and their true beliefs, not what we hear on the media, what they truly stand for, then I think we'll move forward. But it has to be through education.
Wonderfully said, wonderfully said. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll address individuals who find their purpose in a capital market with business. Please stay tuned.
The needs in our society are infinite, the resources are limited, but if we can help just one person, if we can help two people, then we're doing well.
Welcome back. You're watching Ask Dr. Neni, and today we've been discussing finding the meaning in life. Now, some people find their purpose in lineage, others in spirituality, but many find it in success in business and capital growth opportunity. Here with us is now Paul Glantz, CEO of Imagine Entertainment. Thank you for joining us, Paul. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Doctor. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about how you became successful in your path to success.
Well, I think, like many people, my success is largely born out of the grace that's been given to me by others. I had the good fortune of being mentored by others. I was afforded a wonderful education here in metropolitan Detroit at Wayne State University. And so I worked hard, but I had a lot of folks rooting for me and helped me along the way.
Yeah, and tell me, you know, we started the show on this part of it saying that many find success in business. How much meaning is there in your life from the fruits of your labor, rather than all the hard work that you've done, and now you've been successful? How much meaning do you get from that? You know, how much meaning do you get from that success?
You know, it's very fulfilling, and I'll tell you why. I have a servant mentality, and I believe that all success in life is born out of serving others. In fact, in my business life, I endeavor to put the interests of my guests or my clients above my own. And whenever you do that, inevitably, both parties are very successful. And so I enjoy being a servant to others. In fact, going back to my earliest days, working as a dishwasher, busboy, being a CPA, working on tax work for wealthy people, I've always been a servant to others, and I've enjoyed it immensely.
So tell me about that. You know, it's almost giving to others that's actually given back to you. I mean, do you feel that there's some reciprocation of all that you've done for others in your life?
Absolutely. It's dawned on me, and I don't know why it took me until about 6 years ago when I finally discovered, but every good thing that's happened to me in my business life is directly attributable to having done right by others.
No kidding. And we talked about this. You're wearing and tell me what you're wearing on your lapel there.
Oh, it's my starfish pen.
Yeah, tell me about the story of the starfish.
That's a great story. The starfish story is one where two folks are walking along the beach, a young man and a young lady. And the young lady reaches down to begin throwing a few of those starfish that were washed up at low tide back into the ocean. To which the young man says to her, "Why are you bothering? It's hopeless." To which she responds, "Tell that to those I've thrown back." And so I've had a great privilege in my life of achieving some economic success. And in doing so, I think there's a responsibility to get back to our society. And so the needs in our society are infinite, the resources are limited, but if we can help just one person, if we can help two people, then we're doing well.
That's what we say, you know, with our show, Ask Dr. Neni. If we can reach one person that changes their life, you know, you feel like you've been fulfilled. Let me ask you a difficult question. People say, well, you know, there's business and there's spirituality, and they're on opposite sides of the spectrum. Do you feel that that's the case, or do you think there's some commonality?
Oh, I think there's tremendous commonality, because if you're successful in business, you inevitably are doing so through the success of others. And so my job is to foster the success of others. And so one of the things I'm most proud of is that we've taken an entrepreneurial business and grown it to over 1,000 teammates.
Wow.
And so today we provide for lots of families. We help support families through the work of our teammates.
So Paul, we want to go for our deep dreams, but how about when you have financial hardship or financial adversity as an entrepreneur? What would you suggest?
Well, I think it's important that one conduct himself or herself with integrity at all times. And so if you're having difficulty paying your creditors, I say you address the situation head on, you explain the situation, and you do your best to deal with it within your confines of your skills, your abilities, and your faith.
And almost every entrepreneur that's ever been in business knows that financial adversity just is part of the whole process, and you get stronger. I heard there's a question in the studio audience. Is there? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
How can you advise an entrepreneur how to follow their passion?
Entrepreneur, how would you advise them?
Well, I think you have to follow your passion. I think you have to love what you're doing, because if you love your work, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think, again, if you put the interests of others ahead of your own, you'll find that you've established relationships and loyalty among customers and clients that'll stay with you for your lifetime.
That's wonderful advice. So servant leadership, huh?
Yes.
You serve others, and even in your business, then you'll go far. Great advice. We have to take a break. When we come back, Partha's Prescriptions. Welcome back. You've been watching Ask Dr. Neti, and today we've delved into the meaning of life, how we find purpose, and what happens when our life does not go as we had planned. So what can we take away from today's Partha's Prescriptions? Discovering what your meaning in life is can help your physical and mental health. If you know why you're here, you'll be even more driven to take the steps needed to reach your goals and be less stressed. Also, faith can be a powerful motivator and provide both meaning and comfort. If you feel lost, do not be afraid to reach out to a religious leader for guidance. Also, even though 99% of human DNA is the same, we're all unique. Spend time getting to know yourself. Meditation, journaling, yoga, or artistic expression may help you find the meaning of life and keep your mind active and healthy as well. Performing good deeds for others can be a joy and increase your own health and happiness. To stay informed about today's topic, learn about healthy living, and how to become your own health hero, please visit us at AskDrNeti.com. Also, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest, and join our discussion. Lastly, there's a beautiful word in the Hindi language that literally means the light in me honors the light in you, and that word is namaste. So namaste to each and every one of you. Thank you for watching. See you next time.